All right, you guys are getting me in, no makeup and hair bun on a Saturday, but I wanted to welcome you to the 100th episode of the Abundant Beans podcast. I can't believe we're here, and I'm crying a little bit. I just scrolled through all of these podcasts, and it just gave me the warmest fuzzies. We work our butts off every week. It takes a lot of time, effort, and manpower to make this thing happen. And we are just so happy that you find value in it and that you keep coming back week after week to just meet those great people and get that great advice. So I wanted to say thank you for listening. Thank you for downloading. I also want to give a shout out to my team, Stephen Andrews at Spotted Dog Media. Is that what we're doing now, Steven? Spotted Dog Digital? Sure. We'll drop that in the description box. And my VA, Emily, who, guys, she manages all the guests. She does all the posts. She helps me stay sane when this thing kind of exploded on us. And I just want to say thank you for being here. I want you to thank Emily and Steven. If you have the ability to, you can hit us up on Facebook, wherever you want to hit us up. LinkedIn's always a good place also. But just thank you. Thank you for being here. Thank you for hanging out with us. And we just hope that you're finding some value in this podcast. Without further ado, we're going to do some highlight reels for you guys for this 100th episode. We'll do some quick intros and then we'll roll the clips. And we hope that you find some actionable advice in these highlights, because that's what we're here for. We're here to help your business move forward and to give you something to work on. So here we go. One of our favorite topics on the podcast is culture, is business culture. What are you building? Who are you bringing along? And how are you helping your people grow also? Josh Vaisman has been one of our favorite guests. He's been on twice now, I think. I talked to him so much, I'm not quite sure. And in this episode, in the episode, he talks about what a positive environment looks like and what it doesn't look like. And I think that's really super helpful because it helps us frame how we can make some changes in our culture and in our business environment for everybody's benefit. Hope you enjoy it.
So a positive environment for me, that's a great question. Positive environment for me is an environment in which people can feel like they are doing fulfilling work. Fulfilling work means a lot of things. So I think it's helpful to start to clarify what isn't a positive environment. Mm-hmm. A positive environment is not kumbaya. Right? A positive environment is not everybody's opinion, counts all the time. A positive environment is not hand-holding or back-patting. It's not about, this sort of toxic or false positivity that you see a lot of kind of throughout the world, I think. It's not about entitlement. A positive environment is about helping people fulfill their potential and helping them really feel fulfilled by their work through a sense of meaningfulness. And sometimes that's really hard work. Sometimes meaningful work is really difficult. It can be really stressful, it can be really challenging. And that's no different in veterinary medicine. Some of the things that we encounter in vet med are really, really hard. Emotionally difficult, sometimes morally difficult, certainly physically and psychologically difficult. But creating an environment that's focused on what's best in people, focused on building up and leveraging those best components, focused on really helping people fulfill their potential, whether it be within that particular environment or elsewhere, is what I think is a positive workplace.
In this clip, we have our Kyle Matthews, who we all love, talking about resilient relationships and how what the benefit of having a resilient relationship is with your customers. It gives you the ability for second chances, it gives you the ability to own mistakes, and it gives you the ability to make things better. And it gives you the ability to have repeatable revenue and clients that love you, know, like, and trust you. And I love where we talk about how everybody makes mistakes. We're all human. Stuff's going to go sideways. It just is. And what are our relationships with our clients, and how can we build those resilient relationships? Hope you enjoy it.
having a relationship with a customer that is resilient enough to allow for a second chance.
I love that.
Because at the end of the day, we're all going to mess up.
We're people.
Right?
We mess up.
We're human.
It's really cool.
But to have a relationship to the point where you get that phone call and, hey, like, here's what happened, right? I think I said on the podcast last time I was here, was that extreme ownership mentality of, shoot, so sorry, how would you like to remedy this situation? Here's what I propose. Here's what we can do. And I think that is a piece of business that's overlooked. And I think that, unfortunately, it's a differentiating factor.
It is.
Because people come say, we're the best, this is what we do. And it's like, well, yes, but, I think what really defines an organization is what they do when things don't go quite so well.
All right, Stephen Crawford, here we go. Guys, if you've not listened to his episodes, they're all so good. I use all his tips, all his tricks, all his productivity stuff. Does it always work with my ADHD? No, but it's all still good stuff. I actually picked this clip because Stephen talks about authenticity in this clip, and it's one of the things that is, we know we talk about this a lot, but it's one of the things that are so important. If you can't be real with people and you can't be your real self, how can you build a business that works? So in this clip, Stephen talks about some authenticity and why that's so important. Hope you enjoy it.
Bouncing back over to Mr. Crawford, what advice do you have for young leaders in both corporations and small businesses?
Leadership is a big thing, right? And a lot of people have different interpretations of what that is, what the definition is, what a good leader looks like, and all that. As far as young people new to business, like coming out of college or the military, or right out of high school into the professional space, or new business leaders, one of the main things that is constant in people that are successful leaders is authenticity, being true to themselves. So I would say have a strong sense of what your values are and stay true to those in your business. And if you do that and you surround yourself with people that have similar values, you're going to find success one way or the other.
All right. So episode 97, I know. Guys, 100 episodes. I'm losing my mind here. How did this happen? Oh, I know how it happened. We probably have about 20 more in the can too. So more coming, I promise. Peter Montoya, this was a great interview. I really enjoyed this interview. I feel like it happened months ago. Maybe it just went up a couple weeks ago, but it happened months ago. I asked Peter about how to be a great leader and what was super important. And his answer was about reading 2 books a month, just 2, and why that is so important. And that is actionable advice that you can implement today. Go download something you've been wanting to listen to or that somebody's recommended. I have a whole list myself.
What is the one thing each business owner person should do right now today to hone their leadership skills?
Adopt the strategy of reading 2 books a month.
Oh, I like it.
Yeah,
just
read
any
2 books a month. So my preference, I like nonfiction books. So I read a lot of books about psychology, business, leadership, anthropology, psychology. So I really like understanding how people operate. So that's where I spend most of my time reading books. But honestly, I don't care what kind of book you read. If you want to read 24 fiction books in the course of the year, good. At the very, very least, you're increasing your vocabulary, you're learning new content, and you're learning empathy. It is really, really, really hard to be a reader and be a loser. It's really, 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 really hard.
That's the quote from this one. It's really hard to be a reader and a loser. I love that so much.
So there are, the opposite, the more positive version of those readers or leaders. I just think it's so, I don't know. I've heard it too many times. It's true though. So the more or less what we are as human beings is we are pattern recognition machines. We recognize patterns. we recognize patterns, and we can predict what will happen when the patterns are in place. So when you read more books, it's giving your brain a greater field of pattern recognition. So when you walk into a scenario, you can pretty much predict what the outcome will be, and you will not be on the losing end of that outcome.
Yeah, I mean, as many people as I talk to, as many masterminds as I've done or whatever, like all this leadership stuff we're talking about is stuff I've heard before, but some bits of it are probably going to stick better than others have before, right?
Yes.
So I love it. And I read, well, I listen.
Same difference.
I'm a listener because I can work and listen. But thank you so much for your time today.
Loved being with you, Jamie. You're a great interviewer. It was a lot of fun. Love to come back.
This next clip is with Josh Allen Dykstra. He is one of the 4 thought leaders on culture. And I love what he says here about building resilient teams and working in what gives you energy and not what takes your energy. One of the things that I always work with business owners, and I do this with myself, is why am I doing this thing that is so much draining me? And how do I do it for the last time? And how do we move to the things that give me energy so that I'm not exhausted at the end of the day? Which, we all, as business owners, we're all exhausted at the end of the day usually, but we're working on our highest and best and the things that we're so good at and the things that give us, that just, that just makes us light up. It very much helps to work like that and to have our team work like that. I hope you like the clip.
So what is the one piece of advice you would give a business who wants to build a resilient team?
Yeah, I think the advice is to remember that teams are made up of individuals.
Not robots.
Yeah, individual human beings, exactly. And that each human being has their own unique fingerprints of what lights them up, what gives them energy, and what makes them go dim, what drains their energy. Every human being's recipe is different. And so as much as possible, each person, encourage each person to be going on this learning journey of starting to understand we call this building energy intelligence. And so go on this journey, all of you as individuals, to learn more about what brings you energy at work and what sucks it out. Each person as an individual ought to commit to that journey. And then there's also a team aspect to this. So we call this me and we, right? There's a me and there's a we. So the me part, right, go on the individual journey and make it safe and okay for everyone to go on this individual journey. And really the only way to do this is for the leader to go first.
Right.
The leader needs to make it okay. Then as a team, we would recommend what you do is also kind of what we talked about earlier is simple practices that happen regularly, consistently in your team meetings to start to share the things that you're learning about what gives you energy and what doesn't. Maybe overdrive, like we talked about, right? These things that I'm learning about me that help me be at my best at work. Those things are really helpful for you to know if we work together, because again, these are core relationships we have in our lives if we work together a lot. And so share them, right? It doesn't need to be complicated. It doesn't need to take a lot of time, but even 10 minutes, 15 minutes, a week inside your meeting where you have a sharing practice around what you're learning about yourselves and about each other as colleagues. It's magic. Like this is stuff we've been practicing in our team, and it's incredible what it's done for our levels of psychological safety. And we're entirely virtual, right? And so I think, again, to your question earlier, right, there's some unique challenges there because we don't run into each other in the hallways. So there almost has to be more communication. But again, we're more alike than we are different. So more sharing about what we're learning. And then, so we learn on your own, share it with your team. It's magic.
All right, this clip is Jared Frost, Denver real estate extraordinaire. And we're talking about networking. And we're talking about how he's moved out of, doing real estate deals to really running his team and how that's changed. what he does in his business and how biz development is his current focus, and how he does that. He does a lot of one-on-one coffees, and really what makes that effective. I hope you enjoy the clip and can get some advice out of here. Now that it's COVID, though, I do these via Zoom. Enjoy the clip.
So your current focus has been on biz dev. How do you approach making your business grow?
That's a really good question. Yeah, well, see, it would have been really nice to know that question before. But what's my approach? Or
Yeah. So you've been spending a lot of time out networking and working on biz dev and
Stuff.
bringing more stuff in.
Yes. Totally.
So what is your approach to that? So what is your process? How do you do that? What works for you guys?
Yeah.
And for you?
So I'll say the first thing that I realized is, we kind of talk about some of the self-development we're doing, right? Is I have an issue. I don't know when to stop, right? So I've actually realized and kind of learning about myself over the last 6 months that, now that I'm not doing deals, my days I don't feel like I'm doing anything, right? Because there aren't the battles, there aren't the stress is different, right? Yeah. The fire drills are a lot less. So like I've been so used to that I'm not getting that anymore. And it almost feels like at the end of the day, even if I had 5 networking appointments, I didn't do anything because there wasn't that like fire.
Yeah.
Right.
I'm working with a coach right now, Travis Baird, who's been on the podcast.
Yeah.
He's awesome. And he has me writing down all my events so that I can check them off. So at the end of the day, when I look down at my calendar or whatever, I can actually see that I did do something. It might have not been all the tasks that I have to do, or I'm not working on projects or whatever, but he did do something.
That's awesome.
With my time. And so that's really helped to kind of reframe that thing. Because I spend a lot of time talking to podcast guests. I spend a lot of time on LinkedIn. I spend a lot of time doing this.
Yeah.
I spend a lot of time supporting my team as they support our clients. And as I try to step out more, the more I kind of feel afloat.
Exactly.
I was like, I keep going, do you guys need anything on
what do you need from
projects?
me right now?
Like what is there anything I can, where's this? Like, and I don't want to micromanage them. So I'm just like,
the problem is stepping out.
Where's this at though?
And what's been interesting about that is it's almost made it that, so like, what's my approach? How do I approach it? I almost don't know how to not do it, because now that this is my sole focus, right, to, if I don't feel kind of like mentally drained at the end of the day, I just keep going, right? And so I would say last year I had my assistant count it up. We did handicap it a little bit, but I had 512 networking appointments last year.
And those are all one-on-one coffees.
All one-on-one coffee, beer, happy hour, or network event or something like that. But I averaged over 2 events per business day last year.
So your approach is one-on-ones?
100%. And calls, right? So like I am super militant about my schedule. So, and we've changed it a lot in the last 2 months, and it's actually helped out a lot. So pretty much my afternoon is entirely free 3 days a week. During the mornings, I'm militaristic about being on the phone, sending out my emails, like getting through my tasks and stuff like that. So, I think part of it is that, what's my approach? Well, my approach is now I'm doing what I actually want to do. So I'm kind of excited to get out there and meet people and figure out what to do next, right? And that's kind of been my approach, just do it until you can't do it anymore.
I love it.
I guess.
So you've really embraced the go-giver mentality.
Go-giver?
Go-giver.
Go-giver.
Have you heard that?
No.
Okay. So that might be Stephen Covey. But that's that go-giver, like constantly just helping people where they're at.
Well, thank you.
I literally get like 3 emails a week from you, like making intros.
Because I guess every time,
that's amazing, because every time you talk to somebody, you're like, who's a good fit for this person?
That's true. Yeah.
And it's that master networking thing, that master connecting.
Yeah.
That a lot of people have a hard time like doing.
Yes.
Is that something that you had to learn how to do? Or is that something that's really natural for you?
No, actually very, very much not. So it's really crazy. I'm a true introvert. Like I'm a real introvert. ISTJ, like perfectionist, science, like don't, like that's me. And it's been very interesting to now find myself in an industry where and I get paid to be out and on, right? But that's the opposite of really what I want to be. Like, to be honest, guys, like I'd rather just be home watching TV and having a cup of coffee on my couch, right?
Get it. 100%.
100%. So, to be honest, yes, I'd say one of the best things I learned from Wall Street is that, you know, when you, at a very young age, they impress upon you the importance of being responsible for P&L. So I think one of the advantages and benefits that I got was just, okay, you're 26, time to go find P&L. Like, wait, what? Like, how often, like, as a young mid-20s, are you being told, like, go network with people and find revenue, right? So they actually kind of taught us some of the very basic stuff in terms of networking and manners and how to do this and stay organized about it just on the street. And then when I started my business, one of my best friends is a financial advisor who was in a very similar position when he started his business. So he kind of gave me his system, and it was a LinkedIn-based system, and it was great. And we can talk about that more if we want. But it really was just, you know, kind of figuring out what your niche was and what was going on, and just kind of doing it, you know. And I think the one thing that most people don't do, right? They sit down for a networking appointment, and you and I don't approach it this way, right? But like most others will. We have a networking appointment. Okay, great. Like, how do I get business from you? Or like, how much business are you going to send me? Or when am I going to get my first deal from you? Right? Networking is not a presumptive close. Networking is an open-ended. Let's get to know each other. Let's build a relationship, and let's see what's happening. The only problem is most small business owners can't think 3 months out past, you know, kind of where they are in life right now, because it's all make payroll, make P&L, pay my taxes. And so, you know, what I've really tried to do is separate my networking from my sales activity. So network is business development, selling is selling, and those are different. Right. So like you sell to your database, but you network with your sphere. Right. And so like, yeah, you and I have had sales conversations. I've called you. And I've said, hey, Jamie, like, who do you know looking to buy or sell? And actually, I don't know anyone right now, but obviously you're top of mind. Like, okay, great, thanks. Boom, that's a sales call, right? But that's only after
we have a relationship.
We have a relationship. And most people want the me, now, and that's why you destroy networking.
It's interesting because I've had to, I don't know if I've always been a helper, but I do better when people are in front of me.
Yes.
But as I create more relationships and do that extroverted getting to know people thing, and through the podcast and all of my LinkedIn activity and all of that, you know, I'm constantly meeting connections for other people.
Totally.
And I think that's one of the big values we bring. One of the big values I bring is that my client base also gets my network, because I'm out there networking.
100%.
And most CPAs probably aren't doing that.
Well, we just had a phone call with a referral from a past client moving to town. Wife needs a job. And I was like, okay, well, what are you looking for? Well, I want this. Okay, great. Let's call it. We'll talk in a week, because I probably have 4 or 8 people already in our database who you could talk to. Wait, you do that? Yeah.
We connect people.
Like, my value is not being able to transact real estate. My value is in my network of 5,000 people in town that I can call and get help from, right? So, you know, the question is like, where's your value and what are you doing, right? And I think the other thing that, you know, most people never talk about, right, is you sit down and have an appointment and you spend, the best thing you can always do is you always start the conversation. You always take control. You always take control of questions.
Ask questions.
You ask a lot of questions. You ask so many questions just because, and you pay attention. It forces you to pay attention. And at the very end, even before they're even able to ask you, like, oh my gosh, I've been talking for half an hour about myself. Like, I want to learn about you. Hey, before that's great. If I could meet or introduce you to one person over the next 3 months, like, who would that be, right? And if you just, or how can I help you? Or like, what's one thing I could do over the next 2 weeks to like help you move your business forward?
Or like, what is your biggest pain point right now? It could be anything.
Anything. But if you just ask that question, there's a 90% chance they'll ask it back, which is your goal anyway. And by the way, if they don't, you know that's someone you probably don't want to be doing business with anyway.
Yeah.
So I think just asking that question, like, how can I help you? And then you follow up, you make the referral, you make the connection, you make that touch, you write it down, and then it's just a great excuse, right? Because then we were just talking about this before we started recording, right? Like, hey, did you get in touch with Jay? Did you get in touch with Dawn? Like, oh yeah, cool. Like we're talking, but it's just now whenever you talk to those people, like my name will pop up.
You could check in,
and check in. Like, it's just is the best way to give follow up and to add value and to like create those relationships.
And be front of mind.
Be front of mind. That's all it is.
Yeah, it's always amazing to me. People seem to be taken aback sometimes when I'm like, what is your biggest pain point? And it could be literally anything.
Anything.
Like anything.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
Like, you need a babysitter tonight. Let me see what I can do. right?
Probably know him. Right?
I mean, I don't know. I don't know what I don't. You know, if you don't tell me what it is, I can't help you. And then people are always kind of just like, or I'll ask them, what do you want? Like long run, like long range. And a lot of time people will be like, I don't know. And then like the next day they'll be like, nobody ever asks me.
Because it's tunnel vision, right?
Yeah.
You know,
it's
you have a
tunnel
label
vision.
as a CPA. I have a label as a real estate broker. Like we're labeled by our job function,
Right.
not by our job value.
Right.
Right. And so, you know, I asked that question, and people who are not entrepreneurs or don't see the world the way that we do will say, well, I'm good, man. Like I told you, I just told you I bought my house 3 months ago. I'm not selling it yet. I'm like, that's totally cool, bro. You're a trust and estate attorney. You probably want to know family lawyers or financial advisors or CPAs, right? Because they're sending a lot of business, and hey, it just so happens that I know a bunch of them. Like that's what I'm talking about, not selling your house. Like you'll call me when the time's right. Like I don't need to ask you about
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know what's broken.
What do you mean?
I feel like, well, especially like with the accounting field, I feel like we have a really bad PR job that's been done to us.
Okay.
Because people just assume that they can come in and like all we do is tax returns. Like I'm gonna come sit across from you, and all you're gonna do is my tax return. And it's just like, A, we don't work like that.
Right.
And B, that's not really what we do.
Right.
It's not a product. I mean, yes, there's a product. We do tax returns, but that's because we have to, right? That's the last piece.
It's about the structuring and the preparation.
It's about the strategy and the implementation and, you know, all that fun stuff.
The organizational process, workflow
all of that
around
stuff,
it.
right?
Right.
And then we do the tax returns to make sure you're in compliance with all those things we already set up for you.
Right.
Right?
Yeah. People don't see that stuff.
They don't.
Right.
They also don't see me in the middle of the night like, oh, crap. What if we did this with this client? Right? So there's a lot of emotional and mental labor too, because I care about my clients. Maybe I care about them a little too much, but I care about them.
Well, I mean, caring too much, I mean, that's not a problem. And I think the really cool thing is like when you have that kind of relationship with your clients and referral partners, and like you get those moments, right? Like, oh my gosh, like I gotta connect so and so with blah because how did I not think about that, right?
I just did that before we started rolling.
Right.
I was like, I haven't introduced you to that person. I'm the worst.
Right. But because we have that relationship and we've, you know, you believe in the transfer of social capital. I believe in the transfer of social capital. If you haven't met Matt Stewart, the guy over at Northwestern Mutual, another unbelievable guy who believes in kind of the social capital networking kind of thing in town. Like, you know, there's just something to be said for it. And it's going to be sloppy and it's going to be
not perfect,
awkward.
I owe people intros and I'm awkward because I'm an introvert.
And you just don't know these people. And it's like, well, I don't know if there's going to be a relationship here. And I don't know if I even want to know you in 30 minutes, let alone spend an hour that we have on my calendar, right? So like, but hey, you just got to do it.
Yeah, and I found like I'll be dreading it, or I'll be looking at somebody's LinkedIn and I'll be like, who is this person? And then I get on the phone with them or whatever, and I don't want to let them go because they're engaging and fun and awesome and right. And
the best part is when you follow up with those people because you do and you're systematic about it. Like, oh my God, Jared, like a buddy of mine last week said this to me. He's like, dude, I want to emulate myself over your follow-up. He's like, you call me every 2 months and you send me an email every month and you make sure everything's okay and you connect me with all this. Like, oh my God, right? And so like that was a really cool compliment to get. And I can only imagine if like this is a guy who I have a great relationship with, we can be vulnerable with each other, we can be open with each other. I'm assuming that if that's what he's feeling and verbalizing to me, then there are a lot of other people who we're touching, who are seeing our content, who are seing our activities that are thinking the same thing and just not saying it. Right.
Yeah.
Yes, that's my family in the background. It's Saturday, guys. I'm just trying to get this done for Steven so we can get this episode up for you. So this clip is the Kimballs. You guys, such a great episode. They made me laugh the entire episode. So I apologize. And also you're welcome at the same time. They do video production and they talk about the power of telling stories in this clip. And I just love it because when we tell our stories, we're relatable. Enjoy.
I'd have to say one of my favorite things to do is what I did yesterday with a client. This is even before we got started on it. And this is just a potential client right now who owns a a yoga studio. And she's trying to figure out, how do I tell that story? I mean, you can tell the story of like, well, we offer these different kinds of yoga classes, and you know, we'll inform you of those classes, and here's where we're located, and I'll be doing the teaching, and I have other teachers, and we have these times available, and come on in. So that's one way of doing it. A more interesting way to do that is to tell the story in a way that is a compelling, emotional story about yoga and how it transforms somebody. So the effect of coming to the yoga class rather than the actual class itself. So that's just a great joy for me to sit and brainstorm with the client, because you could see on her face, she was like, I never thought of that. It's like, yeah, I mean, it would be like, who's your client? What do you want? She deals with elderly people and goes into these care homes, and that's cool. And that's really cool. And it's like, I would love to see, you know, footage of her working with these people and how they feel better and how excited they are, and maybe they can ballroom dance again, which they wouldn't have been able to do because of the yoga, or whatever that story is. So mining the story is really a great joy for me. And thinking about some of the...
Well, I was just thinking about one of my favorite things, and it's hard for me to pick a favorite, which sounds like that's silly. Like, surely there's one or two favorites. I mean, some come to mind. There's some pretty cool opportunities we've had. We got to go to NHRA drag race and interview Tony Schumacher.
That's cool.
And a number of other racers, and just be in the pits when they were doing a turnover. Unbelievable experience. The nitro fuel that they use totally burns your eyes, like you can't believe when you're that close. I don't really know how I even was able to get focus on the camera. But those, you know, some really fun times there. But when I think about it, every single project, we try to find one thing about that project that's exciting for us, right. and what it is that gets us going on that project. So, because some of the projects are arguably not very exciting, but when we can unlock that piece of whatever it is, that passion that helps. That gets our client excited. When we get them excited, that's when it's exciting for us.
This next clip is Andrea Raybald, and we talk about how she made the leap from corporate world, Starbucks, to running a nonprofit. And that feeling of that leap, I just love this clip because it embodies what we all as entrepreneurs feel as we take the leap. We take the leap from our jobs. We take the leap from what's secure, and go out on our own. And when I re-listened to this, I just felt it again. And I think you will too, especially if you run a business. Enjoy.
These are things that I may not have come to any conclusion around if I hadn't been forced to that level of awareness.
So crazy.
So it's been a pretty expansive experience. I'll just add one more, a very uncomfortable experience.
Right? We grow in discomfort, right?
We do. And it's been about 6 years of discomfort in like a good way. I mean, I'm actually quite grateful that you can Google it, because that was my grad school education in nonprofit management. I would just Google it, and then I would ask for the advice of like all these people that had run businesses.
I love it. I love it so much. So you did the dual businesses.
Yeah.
You did the corporate world and marriage image arts.
Yeah.
When did you go full time?
So that was I didn't do that until October of 2015. So I actually was the executive director of this, whatever it was at the time, organization. And it was so interesting because this is the dual personality that I tell you that I was leading. Even though Starbucks was so expansive and so capable of looking at everybody, no matter what role you had in the organization, and saying like, you're worth, you can do anything that you want. There was the role that I was in had a certain track. And I was doing all of this really amazing stuff and learning all this really cool thing and like literally having an experiential grad school experience
that
awesome. I wasn't being able to bring to the table at Starbucks. Part of it was because of me. And then the other part of it was because people didn't see or hear that that's how I was growing and changing. And so at one point, the reason why I was literally dying, it wasn't even just because of the tasks, which was part of it. Like it was a lot of work to manage executive director role and then also the world, the 5 states that I was helping manage change, but it was becoming significantly more difficult that I was this person and growing into this person, and I wasn't able to be this person in this world. They were so separate. And I was literally having like a mind melt.
Mm-hmm. I understand.
And then I finally made the decision in 2015 before going.
That's awesome.
This clip is from my interview with Tammy McVeigh. She's one of my favorite coaches because she takes a very different approach a lot of the time with her background. And in this clip, she talks about the foundation of confidence that's required to be a business owner and how lack of confidence really affects business owners or how they run their business and what decisions they make. Listen carefully to this one and see if you recognize yourself, because I did in the interview and I did again listening to it again today. I was like, oh, okay. So recognize yourself and make some changes. Hit some actions. Enjoy.
Great. So there are lots of coaches, and I put them in my thing because there's a lot of business coaches or mentor coaches or, I don't know what you all call each other. But each with a different approach. What makes your program different?
You talk about all the different coaches, trying to find a way to express myself and like what makes me different and studying all these other people. I remember pretty early on in my journey, a girl posted in a Facebook group like, oh, I got my confidence coach certification. It's like, what? Like, and so I'm like, yeah, I was certified in confidence. It's called boot camp. And so it's
called deadlifts.
Yeah. For me, it really has been that power. I think people, right now, empowerment is such a big trendy word, but I think that people are afraid to really unleash that side to themselves. And so for me, that's like it, being that encourager and lifting people up and realizing like, I don't have to be afraid of my background. I don't have to be afraid of all these things I accomplished. It's not bragging. It's who I am and really start to own all that they are. And so I think that is really what makes a difference, because confidence and self-doubt, it shows up in all kinds of ways. And even people that don't think they have a confidence issue, simple things like procrastination. Like if you procrastinate, a lot of times there's this like hidden confidence thing, like worried about what people are going to think or you're going to fail, so.
Or like feeling like you don't know or you don't have enough to offer. I think for me, I'm laughing because we've got goals and stuff up over here. So, Steve and I were talking about, you should do a mastermind. I'm like, okay. I know what I know, right? And I do have a lot to offer. So he's just like this and this and this and this. And I'm like, oh yeah, okay, great. And so it's just a pause to like remember what we do know, what we are experts at. I'm an expert at outside eyes and processes and systems. I can look at something and be like, okay, let's process this. So, the confidence, I think, to also like to do the work to figure out what you're really good at too, or to like to know what is a good energy expenditure for you
and what you're actually really enjoying.
Yeah, and that's a lot of it too. I have realized having my own business, I was like, I'm just going to do tax returns, and I'm like, I hate doing tax returns, like the actual tax returning.
Yeah,
I want nothing to do with that. But I learned that by actually going and doing other things like podcasting and all of that. And I was like, that sounds horrible.
It's all a big experiment.
It is all a big experiment. That is very true.
Yeah. And it doesn't matter like what level you're at. Like if you're at $1 million and you want to go to $3 million, like there's that whole confidence. Like, do I belong in that room of the other $3 million earners? And so, or even just when you're ready to start your podcast, like it's just little baby steps, but they're big to that person taking that next step.
Gotten a lot better at leaps.
Yes, so have I.
When we started the podcast, 2018 was the year that I said yes to things that were scary. The podcast was terrifying. The Spartan Beast was even more terrifying, and I said yes to both of those things. And
all right. This clip is one of my interviews with Patrick Kelly. I believe he's been on a couple times now. I think these might actually be our longest episodes. Patrick and I could probably talk forever and always. In this episode, in this clip we chose, Patrick's talking about why people aren't comfortable at work. They aren't comfortable asking for the things they need, and they're not comfortable asking for the changes that they see could make the organization better. Enjoy it and again, see if you recognize, some things that you've experienced before in other places, and how would you change it. So enjoy.
So let's talk about your process in helping an organization change its culture. So you guys have your 360, what's it called? Your 360 analysis. There we go. So what does that entail, and how, what are you guys looking for?
Yeah. So, the first step, and kind of talked about this last time a little bit, but the biggest avenue for change, and I would say any kind of change, and I think why change fails in general, is you don't have clear starting point or end goal.
Right.
It's the Google Maps, right? Like Google Maps only works if you have a start and an end destination.
If you know where you're going.
Yeah, you can't just be like, if you don't know it, you don't know. And I think that the reason why change doesn't work is there's not honest conversations up front about what's really happening or what the reality is. And then there's not a really clear direction of where you want to go. Once you do that, then you can kind of do that. So we always start with an analysis and figure out and get input from everybody of what are people saying, because it's one thing to talk to the leaders and they can say, oh yeah, we're great here and everything. So I don't think there's different levels of awareness that you dig down and realize that there's a little bit more there. I would say kind of in that role, like my job's half therapist, because I talk to a lot of people, and it's amazing how quick people will open up and be honest with a third party that they would never tell their boss or their manager or something like that. Yeah. And I think, again, that just shows some of the culture issues that we have is people aren't comfortable being honest at work. And it's not like all the things that they're saying are ultra negative or bad, or that they're like super like pessimistic about things, but they just don't feel comfortable enough to actually share what they think. And so they keep it inside. They'll share it with their spouse or friends or a couple close coworkers that they know that they can talk about at lunch or during happy hour, but they kind of keep it inside. And that's kind of the root problem of where all these issues come from. And again, I wouldn't say it's not necessarily the leader's fault, because they don't know what they don't know. But how do you get that information out? And so that's always our first one, is doing a 360, kind of looking within the organization, saying, okay, what are really the gaps? What are people thinking? What are they struggling with? And where are we at today? Because once we know that, then we can move forward. And like 90% of the time, give that information to the leaders, and like, I never knew this. I didn't realize people were thinking this, or that this was an issue, or I didn't know they had a problem with that. And a lot of them actually they can just solve pretty quickly. Like, okay, yeah, we can change this, but again, they don't know what they don't know. So we got to at least start with that, and then start creating that end vision as well of where we're going.
It's interesting because that stuff festers.
Oh yeah, it builds, and it's the analogy I always give. It's like when your spouse gets mad at you because like the spoon's in the sink. It's not really about the spoon. It's like the 8 things that have kind of led up to that.
Right.
It's just that's the catalyst where you're like,
It's like the straw.
Yeah. I mean, nobody, when they quit, it's not an impulse decision. And it's a built-up thing that festers, that usually starts with things that if they were addressed in the moment, if they could have an honest conversation with their manager or their boss or whoever and address those, would feel much better and go, okay, all right, I feel better. But it's the little things that slowly add up over time. And I think when you're looking at culture change, too many organizations are looking for like the big thing, like the big hit that we were talking about this last time, like what like one day offsite do we need to do, and that'll like realign everything, and that just doesn't work. What culture is an intentionality about doing all the small things all the time.
Right. I think people just think that they're gonna say this is our culture now, and then it's gonna change.
No. Nope,
doesn't work.
Nope.
And I think that's true for when we leave anything, right? So anytime we leave like a volunteer position, or we leave a networking group, which I just did a couple weeks ago, it's just stuff that accumulates into this isn't the right fit for me, and it's not worth my time anymore.
Yep.
Or the change I want to see here is not happening.
Yeah.
Even if you have communicated it, or I'm not one of those people that's quiet about those things generally if I care enough about the organization, but if they're not going to do anything to change it, I'll probably leave eventually, because it's not working the way it should.
Yeah. And I think the goal for any organization is not zero turnover, because zero turnover means nobody gets promoted and nobody's moving. We've talked about this.
Nobody's moving or growing.
Yeah. But you want to identify the people that you want to keep, and it's a rhetorical question I always ask leaders or organizations, or when I give a talk, like, do you want to create an environment that frustrates your good people or your bad people?
Right.
And of course everybody's like, yeah, bad. But it's amazing that we create the structures and systems within an organization that actually are built for our low-end employees. Like, HR handbooks, right?
Right.
I know you need them. There's legal things and all that, but nobody reads an HR handbook and is like, oh man, I cannot wait to work here. Look at all these ways that I can get fired and all these things I can't do and all the rules I have to follow. This is so great, right? And again, I know that there's that need, but it's because you have this idea that we have to set the bar because we have to make sure that employees follow this thing. But anybody that operates above that is going to get frustrated because they're like, I don't need to be treated like a child. I'm not going to do that.
I'm a grown person.
Yeah.
I did a great job of, getting myself here every day.
Yep. Yeah. So I would say like a culture should be inspiring and almost guilt people to be up here and act up here, not set the bar down here and set the rules and make it, kind of like a prison style environment where you have so many rules.
Thank you so much for listening or watching. Be sure to subscribe on YouTube, iTunes, or wherever you prefer to listen. If you learned something and found some useful information to apply to your business today, please consider giving us a thumbs up and a review. Until next week, be abundant.